considered relatively more peaceful. There was a point Lagos Ibadan Expressway was a no-go area for some people because of the activities of bandits on the highway. How did we get here?
Well, you cannot isolate the Southwest from the challenges in Nigeria, the issues you have in the Sahel, as you rightly pointed out in your opening statement. You would recall that we've seen videos of persons being trucked from the north to the southwest, while I would also say that some of these people are used as farmhands in within the regions of the southwest. But generally, you seem to see that conflict will go from a region of high government operations to low government operations as they continue to pursue greener pasture. Remember also that you have the issue of desertification. We're currently experiencing a significant heat wave. People are displaced, livelihood activities are not taking place as they should be taking place. So there's that natural migration also to the southern part of the country. Uh, Now, some parts of the government security forces have reported, albeit under hush tone, that they are seeing this increment in movement and increase in crime incidents in the southwest. Whether there's a connection to the migration or not, it's not clear. How did we get here? I always say that in Nigeria, we don't take security as serious as we should. Security as education is not cheap, and hope is not a strategy. We hope a lot in this country. We are quite religious, but we are not as religious as should we be being hands on the things that we need to do. So for long, there's been that clear case of defunding or not adequate funding of security. The assumption that it is not our portion, it will not happen to us. To say that we are protected by some great sovereign power and therefore we should all sit our hands and not do anything. I think security culture in Nigeria is generally poor. It's a bit more problematic amongst the leadership of the subnational governments in some parts of this country. And perhaps the laxity, because now you can see it's come to the fore that some things are not happening correctly. Now the governors are calling for a meeting. The question I ask is, what is stopping the government security agencies within the southwest region from meeting, from collaborating, from sharing information, from checkmating or forming some kind of blocking operations to aid the operations in one other state, to curtail these issues before they snowball into bigger issues. By the time copycats or what you call lone wolves begin to take initiatives themselves, the government security forces may now be behind the curve and will have a bigger problem. So how did we get here? It's systemic, it's been over the years. It's a clear case of neglect or not doing enough as we should do. So if you say a state like Oyo or Lagos is trying to do something, the question is, what are the other states doing within the Southwest region to address some of these
Right.
issues? So those are the things that are coming up.
And because it is said that these bandits are migrating from the northwest to Oyo State, my question is, why Oyo State? Why did you think they must have chosen Oyo State as their base? Is it about the size or how peaceful it is? Because, I mean, Oyo State is not budging any of these northern states. So why Oyo State?
I don't like to go into any conjectures as into why or your state. Every Nigerian citizen has the freedom of movement. People can move just about everywhere they want to move, but you must have clear business. If you've traveled to or you're towards the parts of Iseyin, I was on that road, I think about 4 years ago, for the first time though, and I saw the vastness of Oyo and the mountain regions. So again, if you say Oyo, there's a healthy, thriving Hausa Fulani community in some parts of Oyo. Um, some of us have farms. If you need to do foundation work, you have to call the labor. You say you bring the malams. Malams are teachers by local, by proper parlance. but you say bring their bouquets. You want to do some ridges in your farm. So there's work in the south. Let's face the fact, and the opportunities in the south. So people will migrate. It's just natural human migration. So I don't think there's any clear case of why Oyo, why Ondo, or why Ekiti, for example. There's farming opportunity, there's work opportunity, and some of that I bring more prevalent. Remember again that the access
Sadikoya, are you there?
not taking place as they should. In some part of the north, people pay to Ansaru for protection. In some part of this country, some people pay for them to access their farms. Some people pay to harvest their crop. And even after paying, before they get to the farm, those crops have been harvested. So livelihood activity is the major problem why you are seeing this migration. So you can see how quickly that if the governors and the subnational governments in the north are not doing enough, those problems can quickly become the problem of the southwest, the south-south, or the southeast.
So we'll get to the north in a moment. And I asked that question because one would have expected that the governor of Ekiti State, Biodun Yebanji, should be the one talking and doing all it takes to see that these guys nipped in the bud. Because for over 2 years now, the people of Ekiti North, especially Yemaro, Ikwali, and the likes, have not had peace and have continued to live in fear. And it was just in January the governor gave a mandate on checkmating scavengers' activities to avoid possible security threats. Just today also, news filtered in that 9 surveyors adopted in Akure North local government area of Ondo State have regained their freedom after their families paid a ransom of 20 million. Are the Southwest governors doing enough individually, or would you say they have slept for too long?
Well, I think the people of Ekiti and the people of Ondo should speak at the next election cycle. Unfortunately, Ondo just had an election and they seem to have endorsed the government. So perhaps the people of Ondo feel that their own government is deserving of a re-election. But if there's a recurring decimal in the places you mentioned, travel to some of these community. How many security checkpoints would you see? Security is essentially about logistics. If you don't supply the fighting forces the logistics, they can't take the fight, they can't patrol, they cannot dominate their AOR, sorry, their area of responsibility. You can't ask the law enforcement to go bare-chested or go with nails or their fingernails or their bare hands to fight some of these activities. So the question is how much investment, and the subnational governments must come to the fore. So I do not see, based on the hard facts on the ground, that some governments, particularly in the ones you have mentioned, are doing enough. The reports on ground will suggest they are not doing enough, really. If some of the security agencies in the states tell you how much these governments are issuing to them in terms of logistic support or vehicles, you can look at Zamfara, for example. You can look at the FCT. Recall that the FCT had issues. I know you want to focus on the Southwest, but let's see, what is Zamfara doing correctly? What is the FCT doing correctly? The FCT in recent time has invested a lot in logistics. Logistics. That's the lifeline of any force. You need to be able to carry your people from point A to point B. They need to do patrol. They need to dominate the area. The other thing also is in terms of investment in infrared sensing drones that can give you day and night capability. These equipments are not particularly expensive. I read a report showing that Nigeria now gives to some states ×3 of their allocation, to some states ×2. In places like Ekiti and Ondo, where you have heavy vegetation, the Air Force or the police helicopters are not able to, because of the vegetation and the coverage of these trees, to see what's happening in some places where these issues are prevalent, in places like Akoko Edo, for example, or in some of those farm settlements. So people take the advantage of terrain and topography, perpetuate their dastardly act, and they just fade away into the forest. So there's not enough investment in equipment. And sometimes I worry about the quality of the leadership we have. How much of security do these chief security officers themselves know? I've had to make a case that governors should go to Kuru, to the National Institute of Policy, and have a case, a course work for them on national security, national defense, and national interest. Because for too long, you have chief executive officers who have to make the decision and call the shots. Even when they are provided with actionable intelligence, sometimes the decisions they make are sometimes, just for lack of better word, not what they should be. So there are a
And you
number
also
of
wonder
factors.
where the huge amount of money budgeted for security goes to. Because, over a year ago, stakeholders and groups in and across Yoruba land, Afenifere, for instance, has tasked President Bola Tinubu to summon the necessary political will to arrest the increasing insecurity in the country by convening security community stakeholders, rather, to tackle these insecurity challenges. At this moment, how do we tighten our loose end?
Yeah, I don't think that call is necessary for Mr. President. I think we need to educate ourselves at the states as to what the expectation should be. Let us stop looking to Abuja for our security. The president cannot be responsible for internal security in the state. That is an aberration, and I've made this point sufficiently clear. What I do agree, however, is that the president may want to convey, because there's a National Security Council in which the governor sits and the president sits, subnationals and the president sits. Let the president find that will to charge the governors and find a way to hold them to account. There's some thought leadership that the president needs to do. Put them in a room, show them the statistics from the government security agencies, show them the states that are failing, find out what the issues are, and let all the parties come together and find a will to address the problem. The problem we have in the states is that we are not holding, you will never find people protest sufficiently for the issue of insecurity. You may find some women in some small communities. Nobody's holding these chief security officers to account. And they are the political leaders of each of the states. The governors can mobilize, I always say, to win an election. They can conscientize the people, their party, and mobilize the entire state and the resources of the state to winning an election. But when it comes to the issue of insecurity, it's always amazing the way we take life in Nigeria as if we don't take it very seriously. So the governors are not doing enough, and how we got here is that they're not doing. So what we need to close very quickly is to close the accountability. We must begin to hold the governors who account for the issues of insecurity in their states. Let me give you a case in point. Look at Anambra State. Look at Abia State. When these governors came in, they took the fight head on because they clearly in their mind understood that without security, you cannot have prosperity. You cannot also have economic development. So the first thing on the plate, in fact, Governor Soludo did not waste, but invest a lot of his political goodwill on the matter of insecurity. And today, most of us can travel with some relative peace in those states. Look at what Governor Babagana Zulum is doing in Meduguri. Again comes back to the political will. So this issue of Ekiti and Ondo, I mean, without mincing words, we have to beam the searchlight again on the governors, and I would charge journalists to have a sit down on the issue of insecurity, because it's becoming a bit of a recurring decimal. You travel through those states to the remote areas, you are not seeing the presence of law enforcement. You are not seeing them dominate. In some of these states, the State Security Council meeting does not hold on a regular basis. Sometimes for 4 or 5 months, they don't have meeting. And the governor and the constitution says that security of life and property shall be the primary responsibility of government. What more can a government be doing without holding state security council meetings? So again, these are some of the issues, and that's where we need to look at, and that's what we need to close.
But also, Mr. Adekoya, I mean, security consultants like yourself would say one of the soft or non-kinetic approach to tackling insecurity is the role of traditional and religious institutions, as well as relationship between security operatives and the people, the locals, the indigenous, which is also part of what the Amotekun guys have been appealing for. How can this be further encouraged?
Yeah, that's again the point of political leadership to produce a conducive environment for law enforcement to do their work. Every security person that understands his onions must know what is called stakeholder mapping. And yes, the traditional rulers are very important stakeholders. Unfortunately, in Nigeria, we've seen traditional rulers being fingered, as it were, in some cases of insecurity or providing coverage for some non-state actors. But again, that will happen in a place where the governors are not providing the right level of leadership and being very preemptive and proactive in the issues of insecurity. Again, it boils down again to what the political construct in the state is. Now, you mentioned about law enforcement. Unfortunately, what can law enforcement do some more? The system in Nigeria pitches the people against their police. The system pitches the protector against the protected. We've seen former government officials come out to report to us that divisional police stations don't receive more than 10,000 a month for their logistics. And then you say bail is free. And so the man doesn't have money to run his office, but the office has to run. The man is invited to Abuja. He's not sent his ticket. He has to find his way to come to Abuja. So when bail is not free or there's some extortion at some of those money-making checkpoints, you see some of those checkpoints all over the place because, this system has to run. So the system pitches the people against the people protecting them, and that creates a bit of bad blood. So we need to do a lot. And again, in Nigeria, we are not funding security as sufficiently as we should be doing. Look at the police again. They should not be doing more than 8 hours per shift. Some of these officers are working 48 hours. Sometimes when they have special operations, they're working 1 week in, 1 week out. So when a man is doing 48 hours, he has an AK-47 rifle, he has to work under the sun, in the rain, and you go to their barracks, you go to their office, you see the conditions in which these people have to work. You can understand how we debase the psyche of our own law enforcement people. And again, that translates because it's a service. They are providing a service. If they are not well motivated, if they are not well resourced, that would also transmute itself into the quality of service that is being provided, which in turn will impact the perception of the people. So a number of, it's a bit of a moving target.
And interestingly also, Mr. Adekoya, we can sit here and talk about how governors have become lame duck chief security officers, but also the relationship between the locals and security operatives when it comes to intelligence gathering serves as frontline vanguards in prevention of crisis. I want us to talk about this because of several events of such that we've seen in the past few years, not forgetting how many times locals have sabotaged the efforts of security operatives. At what point should indigents understand that this is for the good of us all?
Yeah, so the National Orientation Agency has a lot of work to do. And thankfully, the Ministry of Education is beginning to do something about social. We all grew up doing civic studies, understanding what our civic responsibilities are. So that's not, we need to have a 10, 20-year plan to resolving this issue. In Nigeria, we like quick fixes. There are no quick fixes to this issue we have. The earlier we start, the better, because even the psyche of the ordinary Nigerian, if I may use the word, almost looks as though it's us against them, us being we the masses and them the elites and the political class and the government. So that's an issue. On the issue of intelligence, let me assure you that in Nigeria, we do not have an intelligence problem. I can tell you for free,
Really?
we do not have an intelligence problem. The DSS has a station officer across the 774 local government area offices or offices we have across the country. The NSCDC has its intelligence unit. The police has its intelligence unit. The military has its intelligence unit. The custom has its intelligence unit. The immigration has its intelligence unit, so we can just go on and on and on. So there is intelligence. It's just actionable. Now, in terms of closing rank and encouraging the people, there's a trust deficient, and once trust is broken, you don't wish to. You can't repair it overnight. It's something that must be built. It will take the law enforcement some money to organize community stakeholders meeting to provide water at the base. It takes some money to do that. Some people have to come. You have to go to some places. You need logistics. Uh, police don't have vehicle. Vehicle is broken down. It's not working. You have community police relations meeting once a month. So a number of activities are going on. So I think the NOA, the National Orientation Agency, the Ministry of Education, Culture, must also begin now to conscientize the people at the local level, working with the NSA, working with the Ministry of Police Affairs and the Ministry of Interior to create a program. It could be a jingle, it could be something, but it will not happen overnight. It can be a 10-year plan. So some of that can happen to improve intelligence sharing and the perception of how the people see their police or different law enforcement agencies going forward.
But I know you remember late Governor Akeredolu has always or had always advocated for Amotekun to bear appropriate tools and weapons to curb murders committing crimes against humanity. Is it high time this happened?
I'm not in support of a regional militia. Uh, Amoteku can morph rather into a police, state police, as you have Lagos, have Lagos State Neighborhood Watch. If you have the police force of the state, you can then have maybe the ranger unit,
Okay.
different National Guard units, and morph them into that. They can have different uniforms because you must have what is the law setting up Amoteku? How does it handshake with the Nigerian Constitution? If the states, and again, remember that then President Buhari tried to nudge the state governors to move towards state police. They returned and they said no because they don't have the budget. Now they have the budget. At least we know that, allocation has increased times two, times three. So what are the state governments waiting for? So why do you need a regional militia? Why do you need a civilian JTF when you can have a properly set up police? In terms of ammunition and weaponry, I agree that the different subnational police structures should have weapons class for use relative to their own context. For example, we don't need police officers carrying AK-47 coming to where people are. An AK-47 is an assault rifle. The key equipment of a state police should be a service pistol. So there should be more investment in service pistol. Then the state police can be allowed to have a team, a crack team or SWAT team that can provide suppressive fire when they are needed to pinpoint locations. The design of having 79 squadrons across this country is that you have a quick reaction team that is stationed based on geographical spread and different parameters of the force, the police force, to be able to respond quickly when you have certain issues. So if you have and maintain the 79 Mopo Squadron, you have specialized SWAT teams within the states, and you still have the military as the last line of defense. You see that we can have a concentric approach to a community-based policing structure that has the punch, yet has the dexterity to be amiable to the environment and then relate to local conditions based on local context. So we can have something better designed, better structured, better framed in our constitution than Amotekun. That's my point. Amotekun is just a transitory approach. It cannot be sustained, really. What do they have? They have Dane guns and double barrel. I mean, that's the limit to which the law allows them. So rather than say, okay, because you must look at DR Congo, you can look at different countries, you can even look at what's happening in Syria, you can look at what's happening in Libya. You don't want to have a case where you have regional militias and then this country is, and
Right.
that's not to say that that's what Amotekun is. But again, by nuance and by nomenclature, that's what it's tending towards. So I would rather favor state police than Amotekun.
All right, Mr. Adekoya, let's take a break. And when we return, we'll take a look at how we're tackling insecurity, banditry, terrorism in the northern part of the country. Please stay with us, everyone.
Sometimes it's the story that calls. At other times, the people just want to be heard.
School, I need students, but I need teacher.
Can't continue like this.
Their voices re-echoing through time itself.
We haven't done anything.
If the tide is high, everybody run for safety.
Their tears leave a sweet sour taste for all. Their demands, a familiar call beckoning for change. In our world, no one expects a disaster to happen. But when it does, we'll be there to x-ray all sides, from the east to the west, north and south. Community Forum will examine the oddities and challenges to economic development, as well as issues yearning for government intervention. Watch fresh episodes of Community Forum on Sundays by 9:30 p.m. only on TVC News.
Every weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and
Welcome back to Politics Tonight, everyone. Thank you very much for staying with us on the program. Tonight, we'll take a look at tackling the increasing wave of insecurity in the Southwest. And helping us do justice to this conversation is CEO Akulin Intelligence Security Defense Consultant Onyekachi Adekoya. Mr. Adekoya, thank you very much for staying with us on the program. You know, having said a lot tonight, the Frederick Fashion-led Odua People's Congress has now, urged all the 6 Southwest governors to treat a security emergency, the building of camps inside Yoruba forest, just as they put it, by insurgents and terrorists fleeing from the north, promising to help security agencies deal with the menace without delay before it gets too late. The OPC leaders are asking the Southwest governors to declare a state of emergency in the region. Should that be the next line of action?
I mean, I'm all for concerted effort. I'm all for what we call an all of society approach. The OPC is a stakeholder. I talked about stakeholder mapping in issues of the Southwest. So why not? The many the merrier when we talk about having approach. But what I don't want us to fall into is to fall into the trap of a sing song. When you say declare emergency, what does that mean exactly? It doesn't mean anything. An emergency situation requires ad hoc action. At best, ad hoc actions are tempt. And once the fad phase fades away, then people are back to business as usual. So I'd rather have a systemic approach to the issue in the Southwest. Are we there yet for an emergency? In terms of preparedness, because when you look at security programming, what most people don't realize is that a security plan is a policy document, which is like a plan of action. A security program is involves different components that has policies, that has procedure, that has people, that has capacity elements whipped into it, that even has what you call human security elements whipped into it. So it is something that is well thought out, that is well drafted and drilled into all of government. So the nuance is there, the emphasis is there, and then there is a journey towards something. An emergency situation is knee-jerk, reacting to something. So I'm not sure the context in which the Odua People's Republic are speaking from. If they're saying that in terms of what we have on ground, in terms of preparedness, in terms of the near-term prognosis of what may happen, and whether for the lack or what we have or what we don't have, there is an emergency facing us. I agree with them. I do agree with them very sincerely. Okay. But in terms of what needs to be done, no, it's not something we should rush into. Again, another point I must make is that when we talk about security issues, it involves every stakeholder. There's a kinetic aspect, non-kinetic aspect. There's a state aspect, there's a non-state aspect. There are industrial security professionals that, for example, protect over 80% of Nigerians' GDP. So when framing a security program or plan, you cannot leave it to only serving persons or those who are ex this or ex that. You must be able to look at, because security now, the contemporary approach to security is to lead security through policy. And people are used to action, or combatants. If you bring a combatant, his area of strength is not in policy. I mean, at a senior level, due to some causes, may be better disposed to it. Sometimes security is better led by the members of the academia. That's why you see in certain advanced climb, a professor is a national security advisor, because at that role, your role is to advise the president, not to be seen, but just advising. Okay, but in wartime, you can have a retired military person, being national security advisor. So in this issue of Amotekun, yes, preparedness for the Southwest. Again, to prove that point, you can now see the Southwest governors saying that they need to have a regional security initiative. Now, to the point again that the OPC is making, there are about 4 Ds in security: deny, detect, delay, or deter. There's another principle which we now call deflect. If security is tightened in other regions and your region becomes the loose end, by mere fact of the actions happening, insecurity will be deflected to your own region. So saying that, oh, it has not come. But that's why you see most nations take an interest. Israel can say, okay, whatever is happening in Syria can impact our own security. Therefore, a space in Syria like the Golan Heights or some parts of northern Syria, falls within the area of Israel's national security interest. Just as a case in point. So the Southwest governors cannot say, okay, it's only happening in the North, East, Northwest, and Northern. As they are beginning to see that position is not tenable. So there has to be a shift. So perhaps that's what the OPC is pointing towards. And I do hope that we don't take a knee-jerk reaction, but we take a policy-first approach to framing a program for the Southwest that can percolate downwards to the different components of the Southwest and then can go forward. Hopefully something that will go to the State House of Assemblies. Perhaps some of the issues in the exclusive list for the federal government, since we have a Democrat president now, can be ceded to the state so we can move this needle forward, where you have the states making laws, adjudicating laws. They should be able to enforce those laws.
Interesting, Mr. Adekoya. And to add to that, the 6 governors have met again, and this is not the first of such meeting. This time, just as you said, they've jointly agreed to set up a new joint security outfit to tackle new waves of insecurity in the region. We have Amotekun. Lagos has a Neighborhood Watch, which is also a security outfit. If we're to set up a new security outfit for the region, do we have the funds to sustain that? Don't we have the option of, empowering the already established outfit, pump more funds into them and give them some constitutional backing? Is that an option?
When you say what we currently have, what exactly do we currently have? Really relevant or relative to the size of the problem that we have? Nigeria has, on paper, about 300,000 police, when we should have, by our growth rate, anywhere within the regions of minimum 500 to 600,000 police force. The military has operation in virtually over 2/3 of the states in this country, and they're overwhelmed. And yet they don't have all the resources that they need. So, I mean, what are you funding? What are you doing? Nigeria in 2025 is not longer the Nigeria of 1975. The world today is in a state of perpetual flux. Our security language, as it were, and dictionary is changing in Nigeria. We're now familiar with the terms of terrorism, IED, OAG, non-state actors. All these things were not there before. So the assumptions we once held when it comes to national security are no longer tenable. Nigeria has a non-alignist foreign policy, which is fine, okay? Which means that in terms of trouble, because we're non-aligned, we can call on any of the global world powers for support. But what happened during the Jonathan administration, where the Leahy law was used to block the procurement of certain needed capabilities that the Nigerian military should have? We are not even talking about the onshoring of our military defense, or you call the defense industry in Nigeria. We're still restricted by the law establishing DICON. There's no private enterprise yet within the defense space. So you can say we're a giant of Africa all we want, but if you don't have a thriving defense industry in Nigeria, we have nothing. And we don't have a space where we can even produce even bullets, let alone Kevlar, and sufficient bulletproofing for our military or our police. So some of these issues also are broader issues that impact on us beyond the narrow scoping of what we're scoping.
So I want us to focus on the northern part of the country for the next 5 minutes, just before I let you go. Has there been any progress so far? Would you say we've made any significant progress in this fight against banditry and terrorism in the northern part of the country?
Yes, so we have. We have. It's not all gloom and doom. We have. The stats, even in the Southwest, I mean, that we have been talking about for some time, the numbers are trending downwards, but an ugly trend is trending upward. For the North, yes, the major supply routes across the Northeast, about 85% of them, I dare say, are now open to traffic, civilian traffic, and people are using those roads. The military in the Northwest have, in the last 1 year, sustained their operation against this, permit me to use the word miscreants, as we have in the Northwest. But there's also been some collateral impact, because anywhere you have government security force operation, commercial activities, civilian activities, livelihood activities will also be impacted up until when, the situation is brought under complete control. So on a year-on-year basis, when we look at the crime data, most of the crime indicators are trending downwards. Remember also, I talk about security education a lot. In risk management, you can never have zero risk. Kidnapping still occurs in the US, though it's a superpower. Kidnapping occurs also to some extent in the UK. There's knife violence. So we will never have, at least until, we all spend our time here on this plane, there will never be a time where you have zero crime. As long as you have human activities, you have different minds, different people, you will still have those crime stats. The question now is to look at the capability, the program that the government is running, the effectiveness, and the government's ability to bring crime incidents to as low as reasonably possible. That is the ultimate score. So when we're assessing government or judging law enforcement, we're not judging them on a zero crime basis. That would be unrealistic and unreasonable.
All right. Quickly, because of time, Mr. Adekoya, I want to have your overview on the national counter-terrorism efforts, the increase of light weapons and illicit arms trafficking in Nigeria. I mean, this continues to pose a major threat to peace, security, and development in the continent. Do we really have control mechanisms in Nigeria? How do we address this problem?
I don't know if you've heard of the police unit that's called the counterterrorism unit.
Absolutely.
The ones who wear the red beret. So if you ask how we countering the proliferation of small and light weapons, you have the counterterrorism unit. It's a problem of funding. It's a problem of resourcing. It's a problem of personnel. We can talk about the borders all we, care, but yes, you see, proper policing work is capital intensive. It is people intensive. You need to train, retrain. You need to resource. There's intelligence gathering. There are operations. There is a unit set up under the auspices of the Nigerian Police Force to do that. But you're in Lagos, go to the counterterrorism office in Ikeja for yourself. Go and see the states it is in.
So are you saying with adequate funding, we can retrieve these illicit weapons from the non-state actors?
We can do good policing work to bring these incidents to as low as reasonably possible. It's not only a matter of funding. It's also a matter of what is the government's program and who is championing this program and under what framework are they working? What are the KPIs set for them? Who is measuring and against what are they measuring?
All right, Mr. Adekoya. Sadly, we're out of time, but I'm sure we'll continue this conversation some other time. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Mr. Oyekachi Adekoya, CEO, Accolade Intelligence, is also a security defense consultant. Thank you so much for your perspective. Thank you very much.
Thank you for having me.
And thank you very much for watching, everyone. And thank you very much for watching, everyone. That marks the end of today's episode of Politics Tonight. But before we go, let's tell you that the views and reactions of resource persons are theirs and have no connection with TVC News. Meanwhile, you can watch the repeat broadcast of this episode at midnight. Get in touch with us on our social media handles, Facebook, Instagram, and X at TVC News NG and at Olajumoke using the hashtag Politics Tonight. We're also on YouTube at youtube.com/TVC News Nigeria. I'm Olajumoke. I'll see you again tomorrow.
Doubt and fear doesn't occur at the canvas, it shows in the canvas. It shows the conation of raw earthen material slabbed, stroked and molded at a pace provided by the doubt and fear. Every move way in the struggle of one to the other, merging the past to the present, brushstrokes of colors seen but not known, for when the wailing stops, the pieces settle down in abject beauty erected for a century of a century. Speaking, advocating, protesting as the arts are meant to be.
Every weekday on Business Nigeria, we uncover the secrets of the financial world.
We analyze the stock market, shares, bonds, and the thrilling world of cryptocurrency.
Facts matter. Our team dives deep to separate fact from popular opinion.
We simplify complex government policies as it impacts your everyday life, helping you navigate the ever-changing financial landscape.
Watch Business Nigeria every weekday at 2 p.m. only on TVC News, first with breaking news.
Voted as the best TV station of the year. TVC News breaks into the core of every event as they happen, following all nationwide big and impactful stories, without the news from every perspective, covering every human angle. I am Veronica, bringing you the news you would want to watch.
Meet Benga Oreshegun, a fearless voice and an advocate for the truth. He's bringing fresh energy and bold insights to Journalists Hangout.
Get ready for deeper analysis and dynamic perspectives. Join me and Babajide Kolade Otitoju with other veteran journalists on Journalists Hangout. Weekdays from 5 p.m. and on Sundays 1:30 p.m.
Sometimes it's the story that calls. At other times, the people just want to be heard.
School, I need students, but I need teacher.
Can't continue like this.
Their voices re-echoing through time itself.
We haven't done anything.
If the tide is high, everybody run for safety.
Their tears